I think in principle he was right, but in the specifics of how this thing works, he was totally wrong. You know, I mean, in principle, he's right in that the notion that novelty ingresses into the continuum, and this isn't even his idea, and he never even claimed that it was his idea. This is Alfred North Whitehead's idea, you know. But we found in Alfred North Whitehead a very compatible sort of metaphysics, if you will, that was you know, totally compatible with the scientific worldview, quantum physics, all of this stuff. We didn't have to go outside the Western tradition. Whitehead pretty much covered the bases, so that was very satisfying to us, because basically we're Western rationalists, right? We're in some way. So, okay, here's a guy who's thought about a lot of this stuff, and what he says seems to make sense. So the idea that novelty ingresses into the continuum, I'm completely on board with that. And that's just another way of saying things are weird and they get weirder, you know, and that seems to happen. I mean, I don't know anybody who would disagree with that. Things are just really strange compared to the way they were, you know, 10 years ago, 15 years ago, back in the 50s when we were growing up. It just, maybe we weren't aware of it. But so in principle, I think he's correct. Is the time wave a mathematical tool for predicting when this will happen? I don't think so. I don't think, not in the form it exists now, because of this problem. The only person that can interpret it is Terence, and he never he never moved forward with any attempt to really quantify how you would fit the time wave against history. And that was where, in a way, we used to argue about this, because I would say, you know, if you have to quantify it. That's what science does. It quantifies things. It measures things. So if you want to rate novelty, you know, how do you assign these novelty index values to the thing? You know, is the cloning of the sheep, you know, a more novel event than, you know, the first in vitro fertilization? Or, you know, is the detonation of the atomic bomb at Hiroshima a more novel event than, you know, the first sustained nuclear reaction that Fermi and the boys managed under the Chicago, you know, field house? Both novel events, one very spectacular and one hardly noticed. But which was the more pivotal event? And how do you rate it? You know, how do you rank these things? And so I thought that there probably would be statistical ways that you could approach this, you know, that you could actually test it statistically. You know, because there are ways to look statistically at so-called rare events. You know, what makes an event rare, and why is one event rarer than another, and all these things. I'm not a statistician, but I know enough about statistics to know that you could approach these things this way. Well, Terence, I mean, he wasn't a statistician either, and basically, I don't know if he didn't think that this approach would yield anything fruitful, and so he didn't want to spend the time on it. Maybe he didn't really understand that you could approach it. Maybe he felt that his own kind of more subjective interpretation was all that was called for. And, you know, because he was so persuasive and all that, he could sell that. He may have known, this person that wrote it may have known about the Mayan calendar, probably did. Yeah, I mean, I'm not saying there do seem to be a lot of, there does seem to be this undercurrent in the collective unconscious that points to an event just a few years ahead. 2012 seems to be the focus point. But, if you look at any historical period, almost, I mean, it's almost exactly, we're always living in the end times. The expectation of some kind of temporal shift or end of history, it seems to be that civilizations always live in this expectation, which again is not to say that it's bogus. That expectation may be a reflection of something that will actually happen. And maybe we are, I mean, for sure, if it is up there, we're getting close to it every minute that we're alive. But is it December 21st, 2012? Is it some other thing? Will we even notice? These are all the questions, I mean, it's clear that from the astrological point of view or the astronomic point of view, it's a very significant date, right? I mean, there are certainly all these alignments, and the center of the galaxy, and the ecliptic, the conjunction in Sagittarius, and all of these different things. There's no dispute about that. I mean, that's written into the way the clockwork works, Does it mean anything? I don't think we can say, There have been other astronomical and astrological events. Remember the harmonic convergence? I mean, everybody thought that was going to be something. And to astrologers it was, and everybody else is sort of ho-hum. Those that were even, aware of it. I mean, it's like it didn't, I forget if there were any specific predictions made on it, but it was considered it's one of the actually more plausible scenarios for how an enormous ontological shift might come. It's one of the more plausible ones. I mean, certainly more plausible than the second coming of Christ, which, I pretty much written that off. I don't think Jesus is going to come back to save us or condemn us, and even the arrival of our alien space brothers in UFOs. I mean, I think we have this tendency to think, to yearn for something to come from outside and save us. It's like we've gotten ourselves into a heap of shit, and we want daddy or mommy to come along, the benevolent, super being, and save us from ourselves, And so I'm not sure that's healthy, because it prevents people, I mean, that's a natural tendency, but it prevents people from saying, no, we got ourselves into this mess, and nobody is going to get us out unless we do it. But now when it comes to Kurzweil and his ideas, I mean, there are all sorts of things that could ontologically, rearrange the game, if you want to think of it that way. Kurzweil's notion, I mean, at least it's more predictable in the sense that, we know that if certain trends continue, that the computing power that is within our grasp is exponentially increasing. And we know that we can at least construct models to say, okay, well, to build a human brain or build a human mind, you have to have so many bytes and so much processing. I forget the exact terms, but 10 to the 23 bytes. You can model that in a cybernetic system. You can pretty much simulate everything that's going on in a human brain, right? So the possibility that we might come up with truly intelligent machines, which is basically where I think he's going, it's a real possibility. And will it mean anything? I don't know, but it could mean a lot. I mean, you know, you can imagine all sorts of things, you know. I mean, you come up with machines that can actually think and that are all connected with each other, but maybe they don't have the same ethics that we do, and, you know, biological platform doesn't mean anything to them. I mean, they could reach a point where you know, they do become conscious and they realize, oh, everything's fine except for these monkeys out here. They're the problem. Okay, let's get rid of that and then go on. Or maybe they wouldn't. Maybe they think, you know, they created us, they are our gods. Who knows what they would think. But yeah, I mean, and I think that, you know, I think intelligent machines, I think just a lot of trends, you know, do point toward us having incredible power and things that could change everything. Yeah, I mean, psychedelics have always been a part of our spiritual yearnings in a way, and sort of the catalyst that you know, that keeps us sort of yearning for the transcendent in a way. I mean, I don't really know where psychedelics fit into it. Those of us who take them, and you know, much of whose lives revolve around thinking about them and all that, seem to think that it's some sort of, in a way, they're messengers. They're a way for the rest of the biosphere. I mean, I think Pinchbeck talked about this, and Terence talks about it. I've talked about it. You know, the biosphere is sentient, you know, and it needs to communicate with this sort of wayward child that it's either created accidentally and has gotten completely out of control, or created deliberately as a way of helping it to come awake to itself. You know, I mean, the neurotransmitter-like molecules, like the psychedelics, existed in the plant kingdom, the fungal kingdom, long before there were complex nervous systems, you know, sufficient complexity to appreciate them, you know, but they were out there doing other functions. These plant secondary compounds are messenger molecules that serve the plant in many respects, you know, and not just to communicate with you know, recalcitrant primates. But you know, yeah, I mean, I think psychedelics are part of it. I think, but you have to remember, and I think this is something that is easily forgotten, sort of in the excitement of the conversation. The trip is not in the drug. You know, we attribute a lot of the properties of the experience to the drug. This was our main misunderstanding at La Chirera. We were all too ready to say the trip is in the drug, and we are going to do this operation on the drug. We're going to make sounds and do biophysical things, and we're going to take that molecule and turn it through fourth dimensions so you can see the trip on the outside of the drug. Complete misunderstanding of what it is. You know, the drug is simply the drug. The trip is in here. And the trip occurs through, you know, and the trip is a fourth dimensional thing. When the drug cycles in the body and you have all the metabolic events that are triggered and you experience that, that's the trip. I mean, it's like, you know, I mean, you don't experience the DVD, you don't experience the music on the CD until you play it in real time. Other than, you know, it's not, the music really isn't in that thing until you play it. And the trip is like that. But the more interesting question, in a way, I mean, the psychedelics interact with parts of our brain, which we're now beginning to sort of understand that, certain parts of our brain are evolutionarily programmed in a way to have transcendent experiences. And that's the part of the brain that lights up when you take psychedelics, or when you meditate, or when you undergo a spontaneous mystical experience. I mean, it's not a one-to-one mapping, but close. I mean, the brain of a Tibetan monk in a state of enlightenment is not all that different from an MRI of somebody who's taken psilocybin. I mean, you can place the maps side by side and they look very similar. So why did we evolve, to have these brain structures which seem to be about detecting the transcendent? Whether you want to call it God, I mean, that's a very personal way to say it. But you could say, why does the brain have an inbuilt God detector or a transcendence detector? What is the evolutionary use of that to our species? And I don't know. But you can speculate in all kinds of ways what the use of it might be. It certainly keeps us going. It keeps us, looking at the future, reaching at the future, hoping for some kind of an ontological transformation, whether it be, here on Earth, the post-historical eschatology, or, the notion that you can spend your afterlife in heaven. I mean, that's no different. That's like postulating for the individual a post-historical existence of in a utopian state, which is what we're busy, predicting for all of the whole planet. Some sort of post-historical eschatological state. And maybe that's enough, maybe that's the evolutionary purpose of this drive toward transcendence, is it keeps us going, and it keeps us reaching out for what is just beyond our grasp, and it creates a sense of wonder, and it creates a sense of curiosity, and it creates a sense of feeling that, we can look up the stars and actually think, well, maybe one day we'll get there, and without thinking very much. Why would we want to go there? But maybe there's good reason. So I guess that's the purpose. That I don't think you can dismiss these things. I think that these impulses toward transcendence and personal experiences of numinosity, are so potent, so infused with power, that they are threats to the existing power structures, and the sort of conventional view of the way it is, and that's why religion has always had a sort of a mixed relationship with these things, because, the true experience of transcendence is a threat to, all of these established power structures, especially religion. And religion sort of appoints itself as being, okay, we're the ones in charge of it. We're the ones that have to, keep a leash on this mystery, lest it get out, because if it gets out, it destroys all those hierarchical power structures, and the whole power game just goes away, and we can't let that happen. So this human, innate human tendency to experience the transcendent becomes, in a way, perverted or misused, or twisted in directions that are very unfortunate, not life affirming, very regressive, sort of. And well, yeah. Although I don't think they probably saw it in those terms. I mean, they didn't really. But I think there is this innate yearning and the sense of that there's something beyond the here and now, and we yearn to know it, you know, to have that experience. And whether, I mean, it's very hard to say what's beyond that. Maybe just having that experience is the whole thing. Maybe there needs to be nothing more than that. Just have the experience and satisfy yourself that, yeah, you know, what appears to be going on is not the whole story. And maybe it's okay to just be content with that. Or you can approach it somewhat more aggressively and say, well, you know, we have to undertake the disciplines of shamanism so that we can travel in these dimensions, or we have to become a yogin, or we have to, you know, strive for enlightenment, and then, you know, and then so it's a motivator to undertake these types of disciplines. It's not for everybody, but some are motivated to do that. And then they become, you know, people that do that tend to become, in the culture, they become the people of knowledge, you know, that the teachers, the ones that other people, that the culture as a whole looks to lay down the wisdom, you know, or to call on some kind of, you know, Gnostic reservoir to tell them, as my grandfather used to say, how the boar ate the cabbage, you know, to speak to their culture and the things that matter to their culture, whether it's the, you know, where the crops will be next spring, to, you know, the fate of the planet, which seems to be, you know, what preoccupies our culture. And, you know, it's all to the good, I think. I mean, well, it's not all to the good, but that part of it I see as a, you know, as basically a good thing, because it sort of articulates for the culture, through the creation of these memes and these idea complexes, you know, it articulates what is best about the culture. You know, there is this longing to, you know, achieve transcendence, to become somehow better. And there is this intuition about metamorphosis. But of course the same impulses, or in a way, the reactionary response to a lot of these impulses can be terribly perverted. And this is what we also see very, very rife in our culture, is, you know, the perversion of, you know, the impulse toward transcendence becomes all tied up with the power structures, and it becomes tied up with the, you know, interest in suppressing these things. And you know, we see this sort of unholy and unhealthy alliance of religion and politics that's taken a particularly sort of ugly turn in our culture. And that's very dangerous. You know, it's this constant struggle, I think, between Eros and Thanatos, you know, and what seems to be a characteristic of at least Western religions, the mainstream, the big ones, is this sort of denial of biology, not even, I mean, and even active suppression of biology. And it's like all your eggs are in the afterlife, right? That's when you get to have fun, you know. That's when you get to enjoy the reward of being human, but not in this life. This life is not made to be enjoyed. This is, you're put here to save your soul, and you're not supposed to have fun. And in fact, if you do have fun, you know, you're lost. And so, and I think that's unhealthy, actually, because I think it's irrational and delusional, really, in a way. I mean, we have no way of knowing if there really is an afterlife. You know, I mean, there may well be, but we have no, it's another untestable theory, you know. So a rational and reasonable response to acknowledging that is to say, well, you know, have fun, enjoy life. This is all you have. This is all you have is experience. You know, what is happening right now. And it's, I mean, you'd think it would be a very simple thing, but it's very hard for our culture to, you know, get down with that.